Is that what I think it is? I ain't trying to point it out because they won't call me police, chat. That ain't what I think it is. Hold on. That nigga went through hell for 5 years for having a gun. As soon as he now clear, guess what he back to doing? Yeah, this is a nigga that can't learn.
I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw it, I paused the screen, looked again, because I said to myself, nah, that can't be what I think it is. Not after everything. Not after the jail time. Not after the federal case. Not after the whole world watched him fight for his freedom. You don't go through years of hell, lose your time, your peace, your control, just to walk right back toward the same fire. Or at least that's what we tell ourselves. But here's the uncomfortable part. Every crash out starts with denial. Every downfall starts with people saying, he knows better now. And yet somehow, history keeps replaying itself in hip-hop like a warning nobody listens to until it's too late. NBA. YoungBoy didn't just come home. He came home reset. Charges erased, supervision gone, a level of freedom most people with his background will never experience. And instead of relief, the energy shifted, the rumors got louder, the whispers turned heavy, fans stopped celebrating and started watching closely. Because when someone's whole identity is built on danger, freedom doesn't always calm them down. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes it removes the last thing holding everything together. And that's why people are asking a question. Nobody wants to say out loud, is YoungBoy spinning out right now? And is prison quietly back on the horizon again? The scary thing about situations like this is that they never start with chaos. They start with people convincing themselves everything is under control. From the outside it looks calm, money coming in, fans still screaming the name, the system supposedly off his back. But if you've watched this culture long enough, you know the calm is usually the loudest warning. Because when someone survives something big, something ending, something that should have changed them forever, there's a dangerous moment right after where they feel untouchable, like the universe already tried to break them and failed. NBA YoungBoy just lived through one of the most intense legal stretches any rapper of his generation has faced. Years of pressure, federal charges hanging over his head, restrictions on where he could go, who he could be around, how he could even move. That kind of constant monitoring does something to a person's mind. It forces structure, even when you don't want it, even when you hate it. And now, suddenly, that structure is gone. Not slowly faded out, not eased away, gone instantly. That kind of freedom hits different when you're not used to it being clean. For someone like YoungBoy whose entire come-up was built inside chaos, freedom doesn't always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like standing on the edge of something familiar, something dangerous, but comfortable. Because that's where he learned how to survive. People forget how young he was when all of this started. A teenager surrounded by violence, loss, and instability. Suddenly handed fame and money before any real emotional grounding had time to form. When that happens, success doesn't override trauma. It sits on top of it. And when the pressure comes back, the mind usually reaches for old survival instincts, not new lessons. That's why certain patterns start raising eyebrows. It's not always about one specific action. It's the energy, the hints, the way someone talks when they feel cornered versus when they feel confident. The way lyrics start sounding sharper, darker, less reflective, and more defensive. The way silence gets replaced by provocation. Fans notice these things even when they pretend they don't. Behind the scenes, the stakes are higher than ever right now. There's real money tied to him moving correctly. Tours, deals, business partnerships, entire teams counting on him staying free and functional. But pressure like that doesn't stabilize everyone. For some people it creates resentment. Like freedom now comes with expectations that feel just as heavy as restrictions. No mistakes, no being human, and that's where the spin-out risk lives. Because when the world expects you to be dangerous but responsible at the same time, eventually one side wins. You either shed the image and disappoint part of your audience, or you lean into it and invite consequences. Hip-hop doesn't give many safe middle lanes, especially for artists whose brand was built on raw authenticity. There's also an unspoken anger that comes with surviving something like prison and federal supervision. Anger at the system, anger at the scrutiny, anger at being told when to sleep, when to move, how to live. Once that leash comes off, that anger doesn't just disappear. It looks for outlets, sometimes creatively, sometimes recklessly. People like to believe legal trouble is what scares artists straight, but fear fades, ego doesn't. And when someone is constantly reminded that millions still believe in them, still defend them, still hype every move, that confidence can twist into something dangerous. A belief that consequences are optional, that worst-case scenario is already past. That's usually when mistakes happen, not because someone wants to go back to prison, but because they don't believe they will. Another layer nobody talks about enough is how isolation warps judgment. YoungBoy's situation hasn't exactly allowed him to live a normal, grounded life. Long periods cut off from real-world balance, surrounded by either industry yes-men or street loyalty. Both come with blind spots. Neither challenge you the way reality does. So when people see clips, photos, lyrics, or hear rumors and feel uneasy, It's not always about proof. It's intuition. History repeating itself too many times for comfort. We've watched countless artists stand at this exact intersection before. Freshly free, fully famous, fully confident. One bad decision away from headlines flipping again. The public always argues about intent, whether someone means to crash out. But intent doesn't matter to the law. Circumstances do. Associations do. Perception does. And perception loves to snowball once the spotlight intensifies. Right now, NBA YoungBoy isn't just living his life. He's being examined. Every move weighed, every word dissected, and that kind of visibility amplifies even small missteps. Something that wouldn't matter for a normal person turns into evidence for a narrative when you're this famous. And the most dangerous part, he knows this, which means he's either calculated about every move or testing boundaries to see how far freedom really goes. That's why the conversation isn't ridiculous. It's not hate, it's experience. People who've seen this movie before recognize the early scenes, the overconfidence, the return of old symbolism, the subtle defiance, the sense that someone is daring the universe to try them again. Video of this story isn't about guilt or innocence. It's about trajectory. A life moving so fast that stopping feels unnatural. A second chance that feels heavy instead of healing. And a moment where the smallest decision could decide whether this becomes a redemption story or the beginning of another countdown. Because prison rarely announces itself loudly at first. It whispers, and right now a lot of people are listening closely. What makes this whole situation heavier is that the system doesn't need you to be wild to pull you back in. It just needs you to slip once. That's the part fans overlook when they talk about second chances. When someone has a documented history, especially federal attention, the margin for error disappears. What looks like living again to the public can look like escalation to authorities. And when your name already rings alarms, every interaction carries weight you don't see in real time. YoungBoy exists in a space where personal choices instantly become public narratives. That alone warps decision. Imagine trying to be yourself while knowing every move might be screenshot, slowed down, misinterpreted, sent to blogs, then filtered through people who already believe they know how your story ends. Eventually, that pressure forces a reaction. Either you retreat into isolation, or you lean into defiance. Retreat doesn't sell. Defiance does. And defiance has always been a core component of his appeal. Fans didn't fall in love with safety or balance. They're connected to pain, volatility, intensity. The very things that made the music hit harder are the same traits that draw legal trouble closer. That contradiction never truly resolves itself. It just pauses during supervision, when consequences feel immediate. Once that clock stops ticking loudly, instincts take over again. Behind closed doors, people around him aren't all chasing peace. Some benefit from chaos. Controversy keeps attention. Attention keeps money flowing. Not everyone in an artist's circle loses when the heat comes back. Sometimes they profit quietly. That's where betrayal becomes subtle. No one pushes him directly into danger. They just don't pull him away from it either. No one pushes him directly into danger. They just don't pull him away from it either. There's also the quiet tension between evolution and expectation. If YoungBoy suddenly stripped his image down, spoke only about growth, moved cautiously, some fans would applaud, but others would tune out. In this industry, being better doesn't always mean being bigger. Artists are aware of that, even if they don't say it out loud. So they compromise. A little growth here, a little edge there. And over time, the edge gets sharper again. Another thing people forget is how normal danger becomes when you grow up inside it. Avoiding it feels unnatural, even suspicious. For someone raised where hypervigilance equals survival.com can feel like vulnerability. That mindset doesn't just shut off because paperwork says you're free. If anything, too much quiet can make you restless. Creativity turns darker. Decisions get impulsive. You start testing reality just to feel grounded again. Add to that the idea of being watched by younger fans who mirror everything you do. That creates a strange feedback loop. The more you move recklessly, the louder the admiration gets. The louder the admiration, the harder it is to stop. That's how influence becomes responsibility, whether you want it or not. And when responsibility feels forced, rebellion follows. At the same time, authorities don't need certainty, they need cause. Associations, environments, patterns, all of it stacks up. Innocent or not, perception becomes momentum. That's how people wake up one morning shocked at how fast everything flipped. How did this happen again? But the signs were there. They always are, and the scariest part is how confident someone can feel right before consequences return. Confidence breeds speed. Speed breeds mistakes. Mistakes don't get second interpretations when history already exists. The system isn't sentimental. It doesn't care about redemption arcs. It responds to violations, so when people say he's spinning out, they're not saying he's doomed. They're saying the conditions are dangerous. Freedom mixed with pressure. Ego mixed with expectation. Influence mixed with unresolved trauma. That combination has destroyed careers before. It's bigger than one person. It's a recurring pattern with slightly different faces each time. What makes YoungBoy's case especially intense is how much he's already survived. Psychologically, that can convince someone they're built differently. that they can handle levels of chaos others can't. Sometimes that's true until it isn't. Survivorship bias turns into overconfidence quickly. Right now everything is amplified, every decision loaded, and the line between controlled rebellion and real consequences is thinner than anyone wants to admit. This isn't about morals or judgment, it's about gravity. When you move fast, gravity doesn't change just because you think you've earned immunity, and history shows that the moments right after freedom are the most dangerous ones. Not during restriction, not during punishment, right after, when silence replaces oversight, when adrenaline replaces fear. That's the zone he's in now, and whether he recognizes it or not, the next moves determine whether this becomes proof that second chances work, or another example of how hard it is to escape who the world expects you to be. There's a moment nobody ever really prepares you for, the moment after the celebration fades, the calls slow down, the congratulations stopped feeling exciting, and you're left alone with freedom that doesn't come with instructions. That's usually when reality tests you the hardest. Because freedom isn't just about what's allowed now, it's about what you choose when nobody is forcing your hand. For someone like YoungBoy, whose entire rise was built under pressure, silence can feel suspicious. Danger was always the language he understood. Chaos had rules. Survival had structure. But peace demands discipline without supervision. And that's something prison, courtrooms, and fame don't teach you. They only delay the lesson. What many don't realize is that growth often feels like loss before it feels like progress. Letting go of street energy feels like letting go of protection. Letting go of an image feels like betraying the past. And when your past made you powerful, successful, feared, and respected, walking away from it feels like stepping into vulnerability. That vulnerability is terrifying for someone who learned early that vulnerability gets punished. This is how spirals actually begin. Not with sirens, not with headlines, not with an obvious bad decision. They begin with discomfort, with boredom, with impatience, with feeling misunderstood, with the quiet belief that nobody else really sees the world the way you do. From there, small choices add up. Being in the wrong place because it feels familiar, speaking recklessly because restraint feels fake, letting your guard down with people who don't care if you fall, as long as they're close enough to benefit while you're up. And fame does something dangerous here. It cushions consequences at first. It makes everything feel survivable. A mistake turns into controversy instead of punishment. A warning turns into content. A line crossed becomes a debate instead of a barrier. That delay is deadly, because it teaches you that nothing happens immediately, so nothing serious can happen at all. But the system doesn't move emotionally, it moves patiently. It builds narratives quietly, and when it decides, it doesn't ask how talented you are, how influential you are, or how much love the fans have for you. It asks one question only: did you cross the line again? Another thing nobody wants to talk about is how isolation feeds paranoia. When trust is rare, you stop listening to anyone who disagrees with you. Advice starts sounding like control. Concern feels like disrespect. Eventually, only people who echo your instincts stay close. That's not loyalty. That's reinforcement. And reinforcement without balance is how judgment erodes. The tragedy in many of these stories is that the person at the center isn't unaware. They feel the tension. They sense the risk. But they also feel trapped by expectations. When millions expect you to embody something dangerous, choosing peace feels like disappointing an audience that made you matter. And when your identity is your income, changing it feels like gambling with everything you've built. That's why moments like this are crossroads, not conclusions. There's still space for a different ending, but different endings require discomfort. They require boredom. They require being misunderstood for a while. They require choosing results over respect. And those choices rarely look impressive in the short term. The question isn't whether YoungBoy is capable of change. People evolve all the time. The real question is whether the ecosystem around him will allow it, whether fans will support balance instead of drama, whether the industry will reward longevity instead of volatility, whether the people closest to him value his future more than his relevance. Because the truth is, prison isn't always the worst possible outcome. The worst outcome is repeating the cycle so many times that it becomes your only story, where redemption is always teased but never achieved, where each comeback feels smaller than the last because belief eventually runs out. Right now, the world is watching but pretending it isn't, waiting for proof, waiting for confirmation one way or the other, and even silence becomes noise when expectations are this loud. The absence of trouble is temporary. The presence of discipline is permanent. One requires effort. The other happens naturally if nothing changes. So this isn't about predicting downfall. It's about recognizing warning signs before they become sirens. It's about understanding that freedom without transformation is fragile, and that second chances don't come with guarantees, just opportunities. What happens next won't be decided by headlines or rumors. It'll be decided in private moments, who he listens to, where he chooses to be, what energy he feeds. Those decisions don't trend online, but they shape everything. Because spinning out doesn't happen overnight. It happens one unchecked decision at a time. And the hardest part, sometimes the world only realizes how close someone was to stability after it's already gone. So now the question isn't about rumors, clips, or what people think they're seeing online. The real question is what kind of future gets built when the cameras turn away. Because moments like this don't scream their outcome right away. They unfold quietly. And by the time the conclusion is obvious, the choices that led there are already locked in. This story isn't just about one artist. It's about how cycles repeat when pressure, praise, and expectation collide. About how easy it is to cheer intensity but flinch at consequences. About whether we really want growth from the people we follow, or just entertainment as long as it doesn't affect us personally. Everyone has an opinion on what NBA YoungBoy should do next. Very few honestly look at what they reward. The energy we celebrate becomes the path artists walk. The silence we keep becomes permission. So think about it. Are we watching a man navigate the hardest part of freedom, or are we watching the early stages of another fall that everyone will later claim they saw coming? Is this a real chance at rewriting the story, or just another pause before history repeats itself? This isn't a verdict. It's a mirror, because how this chapter ends isn't just on him. It's shaped by the culture around him. And whether this becomes redemption or regret, the next moves will tell us everything.